Perfect. Thank you so much. I would like to welcome all of you to the 16th Annual Women in Science Alumni Career Panel event. This event is co-sponsored by WIS and the AU Career Center. My name is Ellie Clark, and I'm the president of the Women in Science Student Organization. I want to remind you that this session is being recorded and will be made available to those who are not able to attend today's event on the Career Center YouTube channel. You can also submit your questions via the chat feature on Zoom. If you are attending the watch party, myself, along with Megan Merlino, Vice President, Saisha Bet, Co-Events Coordinator, and Ifa Beg, Treasurer, will handle security questions and be posing them to the panelists. We have assembled an outstanding panel of alumni who have all earned a STEM degree at AU. We have invited them to this platform today to provide helpful suggestions and offer advice to you, our current students in the sciences at AU. We hope that the dialogue we begin today will serve to provide you with some advice and useful information as you go forward on your own career paths. The alumni that have taken time out of their own schedules to join us today include Annika Bergstrom, Karlena Brown, Arianna Liles, and Teja Reddi. After these brief opening remarks, I will turn things over to our WIS leadership, who will start us off by asking each of our alumni panelists to introduce themselves. I would like to start with a few thank yous. First, I would like to thank everyone at the Career Center, and especially Emily Lelandis for her help with this event. We could not have pulled this off without you. We also want to thank all the awesome folks at the Career Center for your continued and tireless efforts to assist our students, including our undergraduate and graduate students, as well as recent graduates as they navigate the academic world to the next phase of their professional journeys. One goal of this panel event is to learn about the experiences of our alums as they traversed both their academic as well as their professional STEM careers. It is our hope that these shared experiences will provide encouragement to our current undergraduate and graduate students in STEM. An additional goals of tonight's event is about making important connections. In part due to our alumni panel events, we know that our alumni understand the importance of making and keeping professional connections. They stay in touch with faculty members, current students, and other alumni who are always willing to give of their time to help current students. Making these kind of connections is perhaps the most important in 2026 than it has ever been before. A message from our advisor, Teresa Larkin, is, we are stronger together. It is through events such as this one that remind us of the true sense of community that forms the backbone of everything we do, to embrace one another, and to live the message of equity and inclusion as members of the AU community. As we begin, I want to outline the format of this event. Following these welcoming remarks, we will ask our alumni to speak for approximately 2 to 3 minutes to introduce themselves. Following the introductions, our WIS moderators will ask the panelists questions from a list prepared by the Career Center and sent to them in advance. We will set aside about 30 minutes, maybe a little longer depending on how long our intros take for these questions. We will then move on to questions from the audience. Again, our WIS moderators will coordinate organizing your questions. And again, you may also type your questions into the chat area, and we will do our best to address as many of them as we can in the time that remains. Lastly, thank you to the panelists for being here and for helping to make tonight's event a success. I will go ahead and pass on to our first mediator, Ifa.
Hi everyone, my name is Ifa, and the first thing that I want to ask you guys is to please introduce yourself and tell us briefly about your current job right now. And feel free for anyone to take the stage and start.
All right, we're quiet, so I'm okay. I'm willing to start. All right, and I also wrote some of this down so I wouldn't forget any of these things. My name is Karlena Brown. I am a native of Annapolis, Maryland. Currently, I work for this company called Solenis LLC. It's located in Wilmington, Delaware. I am a staff scientist. And just for those who don't know what Solenis is, because I just use this big company name, Solenis is a leading global provider for water processes solutions committed to building a safer and healthier world through sustainable innovation. So when you think about your paper and water samples, and maybe even some of your food and beverage samples, we test those things. But before we get there, I earned my Bachelor of Science for chemistry at at Delaware Valley University. I also have a minor in environmental science. And then from there, I transitioned from undergraduate to graduate school at American University, where I graduated in 2014. And so I have a master's degree in analytical chemistry. Someday I hope to pursue my PhD in analytical chemistry, but we'll see if we get there. So what I do at my job, I am responsible for analytical testing and quality assurance of paper products. So when you think about papers and a lot of things, believe it or not, imitation vanilla is a paper product. Paper, you talk about your cups from Starbucks, the lining inside the cup that makes sure that the coffee doesn't burn your hands. All of these things, toilet paper, tissue paper, water samples, all of that stuff kind of goes through our lab. We get about anywhere from 1,800 to 2,000 samples a month. My specialty for what I do is called sheet defects. When you see a piece of paper or something that has a spot in it, and you're like, ew, that's kind of gross, and like toilet paper, paper towels, it's actually called a sheet defect. And my job is to tell you what is that sheet defect that's causing that malformation in the paper for quality reasons. My group, what we do for customer analytical services is we diagnose what that is. And then there's another group called research and development where they actually produce products to prevent that malformation from ever happening. So lots of testing, lots of things that I do. Yeah, I think that's it. That covers a lot of it.
I can go next. Hi, I'm Arianna. I graduated from American with my bachelor's in physics in 2019, and then I went on to graduate school at UMass Lowell um, in Massachusetts, and getting my PhD in medical physics. I got my en route master's in 2024, but I've been working full time as a senior physics assistant at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston. I work in the radiation oncology department, and kind of what I do, patients come in for cancer treatment and they can get something that's called external beam radiation therapy. And we use what's called a linear accelerator to treat them. So my job is to perform QA on the machines to ensure they're working how we expect them to work, and also QAing or performing quality assurance on patient-specific plans to make sure their treatment plans are how we expect them to be. And I also work in what's called brachytherapy, which is instead of external beam radiation, you're inserting the radioactive sources inside the patient, whether for be a short time or permanent implants. So I also do quality assurance on that, making sure the seeds that we get from the vendor are within spec and also safe, and how we expect them to perform. So yeah, a lot of late nights doing QA and early mornings in the OR, but that's a brief overview.
I'm happy to go next. I'm Annika. I graduated from AU in 2015 with a degree in public health, and I also minored in biology and music. And I'm currently finishing my medical training. I am an infectious disease fellow at Stanford. I completed my internal medicine residency at UCSD. In just last year. And now I'm a fellow and I'll be done in 2027, this before starting as an attending. And my day-to-day encompasses seeing patients in the hospital. One day a week, I see patients in the outpatient clinical setting, but I know that a lot of my colleagues and the women in science group when I was at AU were interested in medicine. So I'm happy to share more about my experience with that.
And I'm Teja. I graduated in '09, which seems so long back. Um, After my Bachelor's of Science degree in biology at American University, I went on to pursue a PhD in immunology at Harvard Medical School. And my dissertation work was on a specific subset of DNA viruses and the interaction with the immune system. From that point on, I have since transitioned my career path to true drug development and did a few different jumps to get there. And I'm happy to discuss them in more detail, but I'll just give you the high level overview right now. I did strategy consulting for life sciences firms, followed by technology transfer at Mass General Hospital and the Brigham and Women's Hospital, where you're really taking these early stage ideas from researchers, converting that to intellectual property, and then out licensing it to pharma and biotech companies. At that point, I got recruited into a biotech company, a vaccine developer. Followed by that, I got recruited into another biotech company that works on rare genetic disorders. So my formal title right now is an executive director of strategy and operations for a company called Bridge Biopharma, which focuses on rare genetic diseases. And I'm the program strategy lead for two skeletal dysplasia programs, most specifically achondroplasia and hypochondroplasia. So these are conditions that affect less than 1 in 200,000 individuals across America, fewer than 50,000 people in Europe. But the way the drug works is by really directly targeting the underlying cause of the condition. So my day-to-day life ranges from talking with people living with the condition, talking with physicians who are working to treat the condition, to actually being part of, boardroom discussions with business leaders around, are we making the right decisions on the development of this program? Super stoked to be here, really excited to be talking to all of you. So, yeah, thank you again for inviting me back. Cheers.
Great. Thank you so, so much. Clearly from, what you guys have described, you all are like so successful and like your path. So it's kind of leading to our first question. I'm going to say a little bit like some examples of the question. The main question is really like, what was your job search experience like? I think especially with right now, and then also like, hearing about your guys' future careers. So kind of like, I guess the biggest questions we have are like, how did you organize your postgraduate job search, like coming out of AU, whether that was like a master's or whether that was an undergraduate? Kind of like, when did you begin? Like, was it like, like after you walked that stage, or was it kind of like maybe a year before? How and like whom did you network with? Are there any tips for that? And I guess also like, how did you, I don't know, like maintain a positive mindset, or kind of like, what were some things that I guess you wish someone told you when you were going through that, after attaining a degree and then looking for, like, clearly you all are so disciplined and like those fields that you study in. So kind of our first question is, and obviously feel free to answer all or any part of that question, but I'll leave the floor open.
Oh, I can start. Because yeah, I went right into grad school from undergrad. So I didn't really have to worry quite immediately about looking for a job. But while I was in grad school, um, the first 2 years I focused on, finishing my core classes and then I started thinking about research. And my program director actually came up came to me with the opportunity of becoming like a per diem physics assistant at the hospital because it's a great opportunity to meet physicists, like working clinical physicists in the department, kind of get an idea of what their research is, what research they're involved in. So it may seem like a lot to work part-time while you're getting your degree. But it was definitely an opportunity that I wanted to take because I did want to expose myself to getting that clinical experience and seeing, and I thought the opportunities for research was a little bit better than what I was getting. So I did take the per diem job, and as I worked, just a few days a week, I finished my classes. I got involved in research with one of the physicists at the hospital, and um, after, finishing classes, I was able to transition full time. They had an opportunity for me because I worked, I think, about 1 year per diem, and then they liked my work ethic and they saw how valuable I was, and they created this full-time position for me. Um, so that was really helpful. But yeah, I think, take the opportunities that are presented to you. Even if and if I wanted to stay per diem, I definitely could have. Um, but I thought the full-time position made the most sense for where I was at in my career.
Yeah, wait, if anyone else wants to share anything, but I think that's really interesting. And that's also something I think that maybe in this time too, like postgraduate and doing more education sometimes is more enticing than entering the workforce directly. But does anyone else have any experiences that are similar or a little different, maybe?
So mine is a little different, walking you through. So when I got out of undergraduate from Delaware Valley University, I actually wanted to go straight into the workforce. Like I was so excited. Um, but that didn't work out. I applied, I wasn't really getting hired. I will be honest with you, I was kind of getting overlooked for, those who had higher degrees, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I ended up going to graduate school because it was, all right, my last resort. I got accepted into American University. Here we go, going back to school because I kind of wanted a little bit of a break and I didn't get that. But it was a wonderful experience going to graduate school. Some things I did, I was a teaching assistant. I worked with Dr. Fox, Dr. Hardings. They had specialty projects, things that we did over the summer. And I feel like those short-term projects, because that's one of the questions, sometimes the short-term projects are right there in your vicinity. Opportunities when you have a chance to work with someone, when you have a chance to, collaborate with a professor, whatever they're looking for, you should definitely take those opportunities. So I did that. Then the wonderful thing is, out of one of those opportunities, I was able to get a paper published with Dr. Fox. So that also helped springboard my career a bit, right? So now we get to the end of graduate school. And at this point, I'm at the same point, like I want to go straight into the workforce. But if I can't, I'm open to going to get my PhD. But luckily, I ended up getting picked up. And I've been at the same job since I graduated from graduate school. So this is still my job number one. And it's 13, 14 years later. So what I want to say is, be prepared, get your resume out there. When you talk about plan B, sometimes the plan B, even if you want to take a break, you might have to move a little bit forward. Other things that I think that many students and things don't think about. So like you apply for a job and that's great. You put it in. You're waiting for them to call you back. Sometimes you have to take that initiative to email the job or make a phone call and say, hey, I'm looking to find out what my status is, because that was something I had to do with the different jobs that I was pursuing. I did the whole ZipRecruiter, the Indeed, the USA Jobs. I did all of that, right? But you shouldn't just be waiting, right? You should continuously apply. And for the ones that you're really interested in, or even if you're interested in all of them, you should call them, sometimes email them, see what they let them tell you you're not qualified, right? Because I know we think about qualifications. Apply to whatever you want, and if you're not qualified, they'll let you know. And when I think about how this all began, if the job that I'm pursuing, so because I was so persistent and I was emailing this job and this wasn't the top things, this is how I ended up being, one of the candidates, one of the individuals for, the interviews and processes. So I just think that find the opportunities that you can, do the best that you can. Don't restrict yourself to a certain area. My goal was to stay in Maryland, in the Washington, D.C. area. I ended up in Delaware. It's as close as I'm going to get, and that's okay too. But I was looking at one point, I was going as far as Chicago. And that's still in my mind if I ever want to get there. So there's a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of ways to promote yourself when you're talking about, your post-graduation thing. Staying positive, the best way to be positive is to, like I said, apply for whatever you want, or for whatever you can. Let them tell you no if you're not qualified, and just continuously follow up. I think that that will keep you focused, that'll keep you motivated. And just because one door closes doesn't mean another one won't open.
That is, I think, really solid advice. I think definitely like us as a young generation need to hear someone who's been applying to jobs maybe like 1,000 times on Handshake, on Indeed, on LinkedIn. But thank you. Yeah, I think that's something that we need to hear that, I think sometimes we feel a little bit afraid of like, okay, like, I don't have this clinical, like I don't have an MA. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna apply anyways. I'm like, if they're willing to train me, it'll be okay. So it's something I need to keep in mind. But anyone else really about like, I guess where you ended up or, that was a good piece of advice that I think we needed to hear.
I loved what Karlena had to say about opportunities and like looking for opportunities. And I agree with casting a wide net, having a plan A and plan B. And when it came to what I was thinking about when I was senior year, in college, I had a plan A, a plan B, and I cast a wide net. I applied for master's in public health programs and I was applying for jobs. At the same time, I ended up getting accepted to master's in public health programs. I thought, I wasn't confident that I wanted to go straight into medical school. I didn't know if that, was a career that I wanted. I wanted to explore that more, get some more experience. And I really loved epidemiology and biostatistics. And I thought maybe I'd want that kind of public health job. So I thought it was really important to get experience or more education when it came to those fields. And so I ended up, because I cast a wide net, having the choice, do I get a master's degree or do I go with this job opportunity? And I ended up picking the job opportunity just to get a little bit of a break away from like going straight through undergrad, master's, potentially medical school, if that was my choice in the end. And I was really happy and ended up meeting a lot of good mentors in that experience who really helped me make my career decisions in the end.
Yeah, as someone who launched right into the PhD from undergrad, I wish I did a stint with a job experience. But I had the challenge of also being an international student, and it's really super duper hard to get a job on an, even on an F1 OPT visa. And I can talk to anyone about like that entire immigration pathway for those who are interested. Um, I think the key messages I would like to leave like this group with is it will be okay. It really will be. I know like right now it's really difficult. I was going to like the job market slash graduate route at the beginning of the '09 recession, which meant that there were a lot more people also applying to grad school when I was applying to grad school. I got rejected everywhere. And I was basically going to do a master's in bio at American University. And I think Dr. Connaughton was like running the department at the time. Um, and then I got a call from like the head of the immunology program at Harvard, where I did go for the interview, and it's like, hey, I thought you may have like ended up joining some other program by this point, but if you're still around, would love to have you. I have no idea like why the universe worked out the way it did, but it did. I don't know, and I think all I'm trying to say is um, don't undersell yourself, regardless of what you may be hearing from the field. Remain adaptable. I think, I don't know, I was willing to even do some of the stint in the library. I think that's where I had my first job at AU. And leverage all the opportunities around you, to Karlena's point. So the specifics there, right? The resume I use to this day is from the AU Career Center format. Some things have changed the content, but the format's the same. I did research with Dr. Arneson and Dr. DeSico Skinner and Dr. Carlini over the course of my time at AU, and those research experiences showed a genuine interest in research. Um, Other things I wish I would have done, which I did not do when I was at AU, were I really wish that I like learned a little bit more about policy and international relations, which AU is really strong at. But as I'm further along in my career, I realize that the superstars in any organization are the people who can interface across a few different domains of expertise. So don't only be a biologist or X, Y, and Z. Learn how to speak the different languages, and that's a skill set you can truly learn in undergrad.
That is all, I would say, really helpful advice. And I think that you pointing out the recession, you probably are seeing, maybe we're big complainers. I've heard our young generation are big complainers, but maybe this is probably, you probably had it harder than us, I think, even when it comes to finding, jobs and deciding if you want to do more education. If I could ask some, to all of you, of course, some follow-up questions on this of, I guess, like even something that I'm thinking about, like right now I'm preparing to take my MCAT, I'm thinking like, okay, and I decided this semester ago. So I'm feeling a bit more comfortable hearing you guys and being like, okay, I'm not insane. But I guess like how did you all kind of, I know you guys were saying kind of like being open to everything and just like, casting your net out there and seeing whatever comes. But I guess how did you decide, I want to say, on like what you wanted to study? Because I know that like even now, like when you choose your master's or like public health as a degree or a master's and analytical chemistry as a master's, I guess, how did you all choose and at all did you adapt when it came to doing things? Like I guess as somebody who, went from like psychology and now I love public health and I'm doing a minor in biochemistry, like and I guess like doing that led me to like, okay, but I mean, I'm just curious if you all at any point, I guess, change what you wanted to study or like, I don't know, like how did you kind of come up to your passions, if that would make any sense?
So I was always interested in science. The question is what kind of scientist I was. I knew that I was interested in science back in high school. I came right out of high school. My mom thought I was crazy and declared my major as chemistry because I loved AP chemistry. But there are 300 different types of scientists out there. I don't know if you know that. There's 300 of us. So one of the things that I did to determine what kind of scientist I was is, I did that whole thing, my homework. I looked at all 300 versions of scientists, but then I started to look about the crossovers, right? If I decide to be an environmentalist, I'm going to need some chemistry. If I decide I want to be, in the medical field, as Arianna was talking about, I may need some physics. So what I'm saying is there are many different branches of science. You know that you may like one specific science, like psychology, right? But there's many different types of psychologists. Looking into that, researching what you're really passionate about, reading about each one. And then, so my homework was figure out the 300 different types of scientists, figure out the branches that I liked. And my mom even gave me the homework assignment. She's like, okay, so you're a chemist. What kind of chemist are you? Well, then there's like another version of 20 different chemists. There's analytical, there's physical chemists there. So, right. So I think that that's an assignment for all of you guys. If you are passionate about a certain subject, look and see how many branches of that subject there are. And, I went from being someone who wanted to be a geologist, an entomologist, and into astronomy, and that whole thing, and an astronaut and NASA to I'm okay with just being an organic chem or an analytical chemist slash organic chemist and just really more so environmental chemistry. That's what I have the minor for, right? And now I'm working for a company that's sustainable and thinks about recyclables and plastics. So I am where I am from all these different forms of research. It just takes a little bit of time, meditation, and really getting in touch with yourself. But that's something you all can think about and try. Even if you switch from one to the other, you may not have to. There may be crossovers, like I said. So there's many different ways to go about doing this. It's just taking a deep breath, not panicking so much, because I used to do that a lot, and just, all right, let's focus on what I really am interested in, and let's see how I can get there.
Definitely gonna take that not panicking advice, I think I would say. I think a lot of times I'm just like, oh no, I need to figure out what I want to do for the next 10 years right now in my brain. But does anyone else, I guess, like, um, in a way, I guess, how did you all kind of like, maybe even like, how did you come to find science? I mean, we are women in science, so any way of like how you, I guess, like fostered your love for, maybe it was at a young age. I actually hated science and I was afraid of it until I came to AU, which is kind of crazy. I'm proud that you loved AP chemistry. I avoided AP science is like hot water, and it's found me now. So I don't think you can run away for long from science.
I will say this, I drove my mom crazy in science because I had a rock collection, a bug collection. I started bird
Oh,
watching, so I was an ornithologist or whatever that is. So listen, you'll find it, I promise.
we're doing bird watching with women in science with Dr. Tudge. So it's finding us. I think we can't escape from it. So, or if you would actually, I would love to ask. I just thought of this right now. I know you guys mentioned lab experiences and experiences you had with different professors, and some names do ring a bell, most of them actually. If you want to talk about that, I know I heard Dr. Arneson. I think I heard Dr. Connaughton as well. If anyone wants to speak a little bit about like maybe how professors or like anyone you've had a lab experience with has like really helped. I've definitely leaned on Dr. Harding's a lot and Dr. Arneson a lot.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of bio talk, so maybe I'll speak up. So I grew up during the midst of the HIV/AIDS epidemic in Botswana. So even when I was in high school, I kind of knew that research was sort of where I wanted to go because I did not know the path of applied medicine back then as a kid. Like if I could go back and redo my life, I would maybe consider doing like an MD PhD that allows you to kind of traverse both paths. So when I came to AU, I was pretty focused on research and it sounds like things have changed now, but back then everyone was like pre-med with the exception of like one or two people. And I think the professors at AU were really encouraging of all of the different options out there. Um, so there was, again, I don't know if this still exists, but there was a summer undergraduate research program at AU. So that was something that I did, first year out. And then, I don't know, I heard on the grapevine that Dr. DeSico had a lab at the NCI. And I just asked if that was something I could learn a little bit more about and ended up doing more lab work there. And then Dr. Karleni, who was teaching genetics at the time, had, I can't even remember the research beyond the fact that there was a ton of fruit flies involved, you know. And so those are the different research experiences. And Dr. Martin, I think, was like leading the department at the time and was sort of, I don't know, funneling all of our undergraduate experiences those years. Does that answer your question, Ifa? Is that?
Wait, yes, and Dr. Carlini does still teach genetics. I'm happy that I get to hear these professors and they're like still here and still so amazing. But I think that like obviously you guys can probably speak more about this, even us as students. Something that with women in science in our community, which is so helpful, is we try to like have like the STEM student faculty because I was someone who was like scared, sweating when it came to wanting to do research and being like, okay, like I think I need to memorize every single thing this professor has done ever. And then I would go and talk to them and they'd be like, oh my God, of course. Like, how can I help you? And I'd be like, oh, so I didn't know how to talk about myself. I thought I had to just like think of everything that you like. But I think that's exciting. And I think that, I guess like what I would ask, obviously you guys can talk about, I want to open the floor obviously to Arianna and Dr. Annika, whatever you guys want to share about professors. But maybe as a follow-up question, I could be like, is there any tips that you have for us when it comes to, I guess, I don't know, connecting with professors and like building those bridges? Obviously, those have clearly, helped you and shaped you into like going into either graduate school or jobs and the careers and the fields that you're in today.
Yeah, and I can speak to that. And just to answer a lot of the questions that you asked before, I think it's okay to be undifferentiated and it's not possible to do it all. It's not possible to get like a ton of research experience and professional experience and do X, Y, and Z project. And sometimes you feel like you have to choose like the specific area. But there's a lot of people who end up in jobs that their degree you might not have thought their degree they'd end up in a job like that. Like their degree, they work in, there's a lot of people here in California who work in Silicon Valley who have different types of degrees. A lot of people who I went to medical school with had, degrees in art or music. And even when I was at AU, I thought of potentially getting a degree in music or a double major. So I would just say pursue the things that you really um, gravitate towards, and you don't have to do it all. So I wouldn't feel that pressure. If I think what comes through when you're on the job search, applying to jobs is the passion you have for what you're doing. And I think if you're just trying to like completely resume build, it can come through. And I think what people really care about is passion, and also along the way, whatever you're involved in, developing professional connections, because those connections will benefit you for years to come. Um, and as I said, you don't have time to do everything. When I was at AU, I didn't have time to do a lot of research. I know you asked, like, and a lot of these professors are ringing a lot of bells because I took, genetics classes and, chemistry classes with a lot of these folks, physics classes, but I didn't have time to do a lot of research at AU. But I got those opportunities later down the road when I was in medical school, and I built my resume in other ways. And I think I was really passionate about music when I was at AU, and I got a lot of questions about that when I was interviewing for careers at like the health department or when I was interviewing for medical school. So I'd say just pursue things that, you can be really passionate about, what you can talk about, and don't feel pressured to fit yourself inside of any type of box.
Yeah, that's I can speak a little bit about my research. When I was there, the physics department had a good relationship with NASA Goddard Space Flight Center, so I was able to get some research there in the laser optics division, and that introduced me to imaging and radiation, and I really enjoyed that. So I kind of thought, okay, I like physics, I like optics, imaging, but I always in the back of my mind, like really wanted to be involved somehow in medicine and cancer research. So when my undergrad professor told me about medical physics, I was like, what is, I didn't even know what medical physics was. I was like, what is that? So I did my research. And it's so cool. It's just like an intersection of all these different sciences, like Karlena was talking about. Like you got chemistry, you got biology, you got physics, yeah, you have so much in it. It's a field that's always expanding and always like innovating. And that's something that I kind of was really passionate about being in a field that was always evolving, and I'm always going to be learning, and I'm never going to be bored. And so that's what I found in medical physics. And and speaking to that, a lot of medical physics physicists come from different backgrounds. You don't have to get a degree in medical physics. We have a lot of like biomedical engineering, and as long as you have to go through this accreditation and residency called CampEP. So as long as you go through like a CampEP accredited program and you do your 2-year residency, 2 or 3 year residency, you can be a clinical physicist, like practicing. So as long as you go through that, like your background can basically be in anything. Um, we're all welcoming all different backgrounds in medical physics. So,
Great, thank you so much. And I really appreciate you all also like explaining what you do and how you got there. I think like even this is my first time hearing about medical physicists. Like if you told me this last year when I was taking physics and I was in my medicine and physics, like, oh my God, I love this so much. But door is not closed. But I really appreciate you guys also like, talking about how you got there, whether organically or unorganically. And I know hearing from our responses, a lot of, being in science and being in STEM is being in school for a long time or like, I guess working really hard. And so I'm kind of leading to the question of like, how would you say you handle best your work-life balance? And that could be like even when you were a student or even like right now, like in the job, for something for us is obviously like in STEM and in science is like no matter what you do have to work quite hard and for quite some time, whether it's overnight, not overnight, or many hours a day or many years. So I guess like how do you all handle your work-life balance? If you have any like advice? I guess for us young ones to keep pushing through. Everyone is smiling. Everyone's like, oh my God, I don't know how I'm balancing this. But I promise you, you all being here at like 8 p.m. for us means you're definitely balancing it really well to make time for us. So I promise, I think you guys are doing better than us.
I think remember to have fun while you're working. You know what I mean? Like the people you're studying with, the roommates you have. I think some of my best experiences from my early 20s were from I don't know, the dorm rooms, and I had an international crowd and an American crowd, and I learned about Mean Girls and America's Next Top Model and all sorts of, you know, I think it's so important to have fun while you're working hard, and you'll find like-minded people. Just because you're working hard doesn't mean that you don't have a personality and can't build other things. Yeah, and this is something I've been reflecting on more and more deeply. I'm 37. I'm in Silicon Valley and Bay Area, which has a notorious hustle and work hard culture. Recently got married, and we're trying to figure out what life for us looks like in this environment. And looking back on my life, I want to say that yes, I've launched this drug and I've helped a ton of patients over the course of my life, but I also want to say that I've had like a lovely life doing it, you know. Yeah, no, it's so important to like foster all of your personality, not just your science and molecular biology, etc. Yay, Callie.
Yeah, I would say definitely try to make time for things that you love outside of work, or if it's a hobby or like going out dancing, um, just to make time to get that social interaction outside of work is pretty important because I know we are in our bubble at work and we want to work hard and we want to succeed and do well. But it is good to make time for yourself and enjoy things outside of work.
I'm gonna chime in and say the same thing. Mental health is very important. You could work hard as you want all your life, but if you're not happy, if you are not mentally doing well and you're not prepared, then you won't do well. I think you should have, 20 to 30% of time dedicated to just your mental health. So one of the things that I do, we all work, like, Ariana and Teja said, right? I come home and I kind of sit down and I kind of do puzzles, I'm always been a puzzle person. So and when I work, it's a puzzle, right? But this is a fun way for me to deal with puzzles and a fun way for me to calm down. So mental health is very important. One of the ways I'm trying to work on balancing my work life and personal life, out. Hey, Teja, right, not too far behind you. I'm 36 and I'm getting ready to turn 37 and, I'm dating, things like that. All these things are important, not just work. Right. So I think that you need to set aside time for you, set aside time for things that you like. And just remember, like, yes, have fun, work hard, have fun, but don't overdo it, right? To the point that you can't function or focus. And so, deep breaths, like I said. I know in one of the questions is about stress, and I've been there too, and I've stressed myself out, to certain points, but you can't do that either. You'll go through burnout. So make sure you're taking time for you. If you get out into the work world, I will say they give you vacation, you use it. You don't lose it, you use it. So it is for you. It is for those times, that you need to rest. So keep rest and all those things in mind as well.
Yeah, I think work-life balance is super important, especially, being a woman in medicine. A lot of you are finishing undergrad right now, and you say, oh, when I'm done with my degree, I'll have time for X, Y, and Z activity. Oh, when I'm done with my master's or my PhD, or when I get into medical school, that's when I'll do X, Y, and Z activity. When I'm done with residency, when I'm done with, and the list could go on, which is why I think it's so important to really see like what you can do now to get the best work-life balance you can. And I think it's also important to think about when you're entering the workforce. Karlena mentioned taking advantage of your vacation days, but also when you're looking at jobs, like what kind of benefits do they offer? How will you experience work-life balance? One of the reasons I wanted to be a resident in California is because we have really strong medical resident unions here. And so we get treated very well when we're working in the hospitals here compared to, other places. So that's something that I really value that I'll be looking for in jobs when I apply in the future. But I would say don't delay the things you love. Do them when you can, and because your time is always going to be, taken up by pursuing your interest, pursuing science. So
Thank you. I'm hearing a lot of live in the moment, and I'm like, this is good because we're approaching finals, and like we need to remember that we don't live in the Hall of Science and on this campus. I run to professors and they're like, do you not have a home to go to? And I'm like, oh, I should go home. Also, I know that we have our panelists. If any professors want to share a little bit, it's totally okay if not to like throw you. I know some of us are driving. But if you want to share any like obviously like work-life balance, it's okay if not. Okay, I'm taking a no. But I'm going to switch over to our two other mediators. We have Megan and Saisha, and I'm seeing in the chat, we have questions from the audience, so they're going to be putting some questions from the audience over.
Hi, everyone. So our first question from the audience is, what's your favorite memory from your time at AU?
Oh,
Getting, oh, you want to go first, Ariana?
go ahead.
After teaching a long day and being a teaching assistant in the chemistry labs and grading and stuff, some of the other professors and I would get together and we would go to Georgetown Cupcakes. Let me tell you, I was in love with Georgetown Cupcakes. We would always treat ourselves. It'd be a Friday. So just meeting up with others, going to places to eat, like all the different eateries in Washington, D.C. I love that. I also loved, working with Dr. Fox and Dr. Hardings. They, like I said, had specialty projects. Some of them had to do with NIST, some of them had to do with other topics and subjects, but just, having there was some alone time in the lab, but I didn't stay there. I had a home, and they would tell me the same thing, if you should go home. So that's why we would all get together and we would go to Georgetown Cupcakes and enjoy our time.
Yeah, I was gonna say I loved going to the museums and the opportunities that are in DC, and they're free. Get the museums aren't free everywhere, so definitely take opportunities while you can to visit the museums. I love, yeah, Air and Space Museum and going to Udvar Hazy. That was we had one of the balls, the Founders Day balls at Udvar Hazy, which was so fun. Yeah.
I was going to say the exact same thing, Ariana. We had one of our Founders Day balls at the National Portrait Gallery, which was just like a beautiful venue. But I loved being in DC, exploring the city. I miss it a lot, actually. Yeah.
I really enjoyed the international student experience that AU, I think, is specifically uniquely positioned to offer. You had all these people from different walks of the world. And I don't know, you're really learning a lot of diverse experiences, both informally and formally. And I would say that's some of my like favorite memories from AU.
Thank you guys so much for your answers. Personally, I love Georgetown too. I'm there like every day, so I can totally relate. Our second question is, how did the skills and lessons you learned from your extracurricular involvement shape your career path?
I was in a lot of organizations when I was at AU, not just Women in Science, but trying to remember all of them. Just whenever I could get involved, I did. And I was also an RA. I did several internships. And I would say like being involved, no matter how you're involved, can really get you experience working with people, which is really important in like the workplace setting moving forward. And so I would say just learning different work environments, learning how to work with different people, coordinating groups, learning from others, learning from people with different experiences who, like Teja said, taking advantage of your colleagues who have different backgrounds and different experiences. So I would say those are the skills that translate most into like my work these days, because I meet people and as a doctor from all different walks of life. They come from all over the world with all different sorts of infections, and it's been really important to understand how to talk to people about where they come from, and that's really important in managing their care.
So I didn't get a chance to really get involved with a lot of extracurricular activities at AU, but I was involved with other extracurricular activities in undergraduate. One of the things I did at Delaware Valley was I was a part of Students for Diversity. So we celebrate all different cultures, different celebrations, things like that. And that has translated into my work life and things like that because we have a multicultural network now at my job. So I'm one of the founding members of the Multicultural Network, an employee resource business group. And it has expanded since then. And we do the exact same thing. We have different events for each month. We just had the Chinese Lantern Festival last, a couple weeks ago and just different things. So those skills that you gather where you have different organizations you're a part of, they can transfer into your work life. You'd be surprised how many different employers want to see things like that, want to see a former Students for Diversity or the Multicultural Network come about, right? So don't negate those skills. And you can always, like Annika talked about, so music is a good one. She works in a hospital. Something that patients might want to listen to is music or you sing. So I don't know if you do that, but those everything about you is transferable. It can be transferable. You just have to have hope and find the right places and spaces for those things to exist, right? But you should never give up anything that you're passionate about or anything you've learned along the way because you never know when it may come in handy.
Okay, thank you so much for answering. I think definitely not only at AU we have so many clubs, but also just in DC in general, there are so many opportunities that you can take advantage of. So I think that was great. So another one of our questions from the audience is, what are the biggest challenges facing your organization and industry, and what recommendations do you have for students entering the STEM workforce under the current administration?
That's a tough one. I will start with the first half. I don't think any of us really has a real answer for the second half, but I can give my personal opinion and 2 cents. So I wouldn't say this is a challenge as much as a pretty huge opportunity is how artificial intelligence is disrupting all walks of life and understanding how to use it, the key gaps, and remaining a critical thinker, which I think is a skill set we learned in the sciences and AU, and anyone who's trained well in the sciences learns this, right? Cross-reference your data, trust but verify. Those skills that I think will remain relevant for all of your life. But knowing how to use AI effectively really is a job amplifier, I would say. I was like crunching some data earlier today, and it was just very helpful to help AI identify some trends in this like 1,000-page document and then go back, cross-reference it, think about what it means. So I think learning that skill set now would be really helpful, I think, for anyone's career path. In the current administration, I feel you. I understand that there is a lack of funding in a lot of different spaces, and funding is being cut down left, right, and center. What I would do in this world, I think, is to, like I said, remain adaptable. Some of the key trends pre-recession haven't really changed, right? Which means that you're able to talk about all of your skills appropriately to the audience you're speaking with. And the Career Center, I actually think, can really help with like figuring out your pitch, right? If you're talking to a scientist, how do you sell yourself versus a doctor versus someone who's working in policy? And you'll figure out the little stories in your background and which pieces to highlight to who. And to Annika's earlier point, the passion will speak, you guys. I mean, you're really trying to impress the person opposite you. You're not trying to impress some mysterious administration or government. You're really trying to impress the person opposite you at any one point in time. So that's a pretty broad skill set. It'll be okay, I promise.
Well, thank you so much for that. I think it's kind of reassuring to hear that more people who are already in the workforce are also as worried as college students about AI and the administration right now. I think it's hard to kind of have some hope, but it's great to hear from your side that we're all kind of figuring this out. So our fourth question is a question that I'm really interested about is, what's some advice for people who are struggling to find opportunities or feel behind because of a lack of experience?
I can speak to this a bit because I feel like it's scary to reach out to a place where you may know no one or you don't have any background experience, but I think more often than not, people are willing to let you come and see what you like. Just in terms of like the hospital, we've had undergrads reach out to us and be like, "Hey, can I see what you guys do can I just shadow for a day?" Um, and yeah, we are always welcoming to students who want to come and see what we like. So even if it's just seeing what you like, shadowing for a day, but you're getting your name out there, then, we'll remember for future. And if you're applying for a job or need a reference, like any advice on graduate school or anything like that, like your name is already out there. So I think it doesn't hurt and don't be afraid to reach out and explore, opportunities at different places.
And again, reiterating that apply anyway, right? You may be the only applicant and you may get it. You may be against other individuals. There may be other opportunities and those individuals disappear. Let them tell you that you're not qualified, right? You have to have the utmost confidence and believe in yourself. Like Teja said, it's going to be okay, right? Get out there, give it a try, put your name out there, all of those things that they're just as important. So, you're never going to move forward if you don't give it a try, right? What's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is okay, maybe you move to a different opportunity, but the opportunity of one door may close, but another one may open. So go for it.
Thank you so much for that. I think that's also very reassuring, especially I'm in the midst of like cold emailing, like for clinical opportunities, and it can just be really scary. So another question we have is, how did you know that your path was right for you?
I didn't know for a very long time, and I'm okay with that. I'm so very happy at where I landed. It took a very long time to get here. But you just kind of do the right next step, right? So I got into research because I really wanted to try and add innovation to like the medical field. And when I was in research, my advisor died halfway through my PhD and sort of realized that like this is not how ideas actually make it to clinic or like pharma and biotech in the world. So I started learning a little bit more about how business decisions in science get made through strategy consulting. Did that, and then I realized that I didn't really understand how drugs went from like science to those business decisions. So I went into tech transfer. But like all of that holistic experience, I think makes me the person I am today who can speak to different elements in how drugs get developed. I can speak to the science, but also go toe to toe with IP attorneys, but also discuss the commercial decisions from my consulting experience. And it's like the path to management and becoming like chief business officers, etc., right? And everyone has like different paths. And in the same company I'm in, there's people right out of undergrad who joined the organization like 7 or 8 years back who now are heads of their own departments for asset acquisitions, which basically is they're looking at identifying new targets for drug discovery and helping change them into like actual drugs and molecules. So it's you don't know sometimes, and that's okay as long as you're kind of learning something, having at least some fun while you're doing it, and it'll be okay. I realize I'm ending every statement I'm saying with this, but it's very true.
Yeah, it's funny. I see this question like, how do you know that your path was right for you? And I'm thinking, am I 100% sure that where I'm at right now is right for me? It's a tough question to answer, but I think, exploring as many paths as possible, talking with people, networking. I spent 2 years after undergrad to figure out if I wanted to go to medical school, and I was deciding between that and, epidemiology and a public health career. And funnily enough, I worked with a lot of mentors who were physicians, and now I'm almost done with medical training. I'm like, I think actually hospital epidemiology is something, I want to go back to. Like, that's what I'm interested in. And so maybe, when I look for jobs in a year or so, I might, look for opportunities that are only 50% medicine and then maybe 50% epidemiology. So, even if you've chosen a path, that doesn't mean that that's the path you have to stay on forever. Like, you have the opportunity to pivot. And a lot of people do that multiple times throughout their career, and that's okay. And it also, if you don't end up where you want to, when you want to, there's time to develop yourself, get more experiences, and those will just, make you a better applicant for the path you end up choosing in the future.
I have to agree. Um, as I said it, this is my first job out of graduate school. I can't believe I'm still here. It's 12, 13 years later. I figured I'll do 3 years in Wilmington and I'll come back and I'll do something else. And every year it just keeps going by, right? I've never learned so many things about paper and water in my life. But what I'm saying to you is, I didn't know this path was right for me. I didn't know that I was going to be, you know, believe it or not, looking at diapers and just different things, all the stuff that's made out of paper. And I've learned so much about it. And I'm still very passionate about it. And it's years later. So I think that none of us can honestly say we had an idea where we were going, but we didn't know how long we were going to be here, right? We didn't know where this was going to take us. I'm sure we all had different paths at different times. Some of us have talked about breaks. You just feel it out. You get as much experience as you can. When the time is right, you'll know when it's time to move on to something different. You'll find another passion, not necessarily another passion, but you'll find something that parallels with you that you say, oh, I can take this skill and transfer it from here to there, right? So, you don't have to know what path you're on. You'll find it. It'll find you. Trust me.
Yeah, something I wanted to say, I think it's like normal to question like where you are at any given point in your career. Um, but I think yeah, what I wanted to say was go to conferences, go to like local conferences, national conferences, talk to other people in the field, see where, innovations are leading, like talk to, whoever. Conferences are a great opportunity to um, network, but also learn what's happening in your field, staying informed, staying up to date, and seeing if that's what you really like, if it's in a direction that you want to go in.
Thank you guys so much. Those were like perfect answers, especially as someone who constantly debates about their career choices every day, but that's so great to hear. So this is like the other side of that question. What do you guys like about being a woman in STEM? Do your current jobs offer a strong community of supportive women?
I guess I can speak to that. So medical physicists, we actually have our own organization. It's called AAPM, or American Association for Physicists in Medicine. There's also a subcommittee in that for women in medical physics. Um, in my hospital personally, there's not I mean, it is still pretty male dominated field, but the residents that come through, like, half of are women. Um, Unfortunately, I'm the only woman physics assistant currently, but trying to recruit more in. But I would say all the women that are here are very supportive of each other. There's no competition. We just want, we want everyone. Our goal is, help the patients. So we're all working towards this one goal. So I don't feel like there's any yeah, competition, or we're all just supportive of each other, and it's been a really great field to be in. And I see that locally and nationally as well.
So I would say look for jobs that may have those employee business resource groups. So my job is one of those. We have a Women's International Network, so they call it WINS. We have that. And we also have a moms group. So Moms on the Move with Selenis, right? So for women that are moms, women that are just, individual women that are just trying to build their leadership careers. We have another group called Lead, and, it's mostly female dominated. There are many different employee resource business groups that a lot of companies or employment offer. So you should just look into those things. I'm going along with Ariana, like, they're trying to build up women in science. I don't really feel like there's much competition. I know we're all striving to do the best we can and be the best we can, but there are more supporters than there are, as you would say, people or enemies to tear you down. So I think that with employment today, a lot of things are promoting women. They would like to see more women in science. They would like to see more leadership. They would like to see all these different things. Regardless of what the administration is doing, most employees and employment areas are looking to get more women in science in the field and support them. So don't be afraid to step out. And again, like I said, don't be afraid to give things a try. You never know what may turn out.
I think that's definitely true. And I feel especially at Women in Science, like I've met some of the most inspiring, wonderful women ever. And they've truly, like, I don't know, just defined my relationship with science. And it really makes me really hopeful. So another question we have is, what do you like about being oh, sorry. What's a typical day in your life look like?
I can go through a typical day, kind of in medical training, and it was my day to day probably. And it was similar to the days I had in residency. And I'm on a stretch right now where I'm working pretty long hours. So I'll get in at 7 a.m. I have a list of patients. I review their charts. Maybe I have 10 patients or so. I get pages starting at 8 a.m. And so I get a few pages throughout the day, maybe 4 or 5 new patients to see. And then in the middle of the day, I go see anywhere from 5 to 15 patients. And then towards the end of the day, we have learning conferences too, scattered throughout the day, maybe an hour at a time. And then I sit back down when I get the chance in the late afternoon. We are off the pager at 5 p.m. and write all the documentation for the day, which can sometimes be quick, sometimes take a while. I know we talked a little bit before about how AI is kind of changing the landscape for a lot of women in science, and it's becoming more and more utilized in medicine. And we've experienced that even, in the past months or even since I started my fellowship here at Stanford. But for me, it can be pretty long days, like 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., possibly later. But for, the long stretches, you often get a break, but it's definitely something to consider that, it's going to be long hours for weeks, months, and then it's like you have to find the balance within there. I think there was a question earlier about work-life balance too. So you just do what you can and make it work. So that's typically for me. But then when I finish training next year, I'll be looking at a more reasonable schedule.
Okay. I was waiting for anyone else who wanted to go through their day, so I'll make it quick. And I won't hold it up. I actually am interested in the next question. Um, my day starts off with me waking up, kind of going into the lab and seeing where we are. Again, I told you guys we get anywhere from 1,800 to 2,000 samples a month. You're talking maybe 300 samples and maybe about 100 samples a day. My turnaround time has to be 9 days or less. Each of these require somewhere between 5 and 6 tests. Specifically for the one sheet defects that I focus on, I have to do all 5 tests. So all sheet defects come through me. Um, so I wake up, I make a list, I figure out how many sheet defects I have. I start with, pictures got to be taken, taking it apart, looking at it, diagnosing it under a microscope. So all those things have to happen. And then I have to run it on like 2 or 3 different instruments to figure out what it is, Got to figure out IRs is, what is it made out of? Got to break it down, component wise. Sometimes, like I said, with the pictures, all of those things. Um, I am kind of like what they call the floater in my group. And by floater, that just means that I know how to, out of the 4 mini subgroups in my one big group, I know how to do 3 out of 4 of them. So I also put my hands in other pots to see where everybody else is, if I need to step up and do something else. So I'm usually running back and forth between the water lab, the paper lab, logging in samples because we have log in person, metallurgy, cleaning metallurgy. So I will tell you that on an honest day, I'm probably on my feet most of the day, running back and forth. I get my hour of lunch. Mental health is important. Just want to say that. But yeah, that's I'm always on my feet and I'm literally working and getting things done. My schedule is flexible. Sometimes it's 8 hours, sometimes it's up to 10 hours. It all depends on how many samples we need to get done. But that's kind of how my day works.
Yeah, I'll share a different perspective if that's helpful. Because I guess my life is a little bit more business oriented, so our days. Okay, I woke up to a 6 a.m. email from the CEO asking what this competitors data meant because they released the data at 6 a.m. So I got up, started looking at it, analyzing it relative to our data and what it means, and what does that mean for our clinical trial data that we have collected, and how do we interpret it, right? So that was sort of my first hour of the day. And then I decided that I worked enough before the hours of like 8 a.m. decided to go walk the dog. Came back for a conversation with other leadership around team structure because we're in the process of launching this drug that we're developing. So trying to figure out how do we align the way we're going to launch the program in the US versus Europe and rest of world. So a little bit of like team governance discussions. After that point, I had more time to dig into longer term data we collected on our program. And what we saw were some improvements in proportionality. What does that mean? The impact of that was the key message that I was trying to connect the dots on by looking at improvements in other data sets. So it varies from day to day. Tomorrow I may be meeting a patient advocate. Another day I may be interviewing a bunch of physicians around how they think about treating this landscape. So it's a lot of talking, it's a lot of thinking and connecting the dots between different functions and um, helping shape sort of an overall program. It's really cool. Love it.
I'll just be quick because yeah, every day is honestly different for me, but if I'm in brachytherapy one day, so that's when we implant radioactive seeds into the patient's tumor. So we're the ones who actually build the needles. The physicist and the doctor make the treatment plan, but the physics assistant sets up the sterile table. We have the seeds and the spacers and the needles, and we build the needle, create it, and then that needle gets implanted into the patient. So it's like very high energy, very high stress. Like everyone's waiting for you to do your job. The doctor may be waiting for the needles, and you can't stress, but it's a high intense job, which I enjoy because the other half of my day is like machine QA. So treatments are over, patients are gone. It's just you and a machine. It's pretty lonely and quiet. So it's kind of like the two halves where you're just running QA tests, running the analysis, checking that everything is in spec and looks good, and that's just like brief. But yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for those answers. I think it's so interesting to see how differing your lifestyles are depending on your career choices. Another question we have, which is kind of on the funny side, is if you could have one superpower that only works in a clinical or lab setting, what would it be?
To type faster. I already type fast, but I would like to type faster. To answer customer emails and figure out all the emails and, questions going. I would want to type faster.
I think in the lab setting, being like if I could replicate an assay and have that happen very quickly, without you having to do it yourself manually, I think would be like the most epic superpower. Because the number of technical replicates you have to pull off for any science is an annoying amount of time.
going with what Karlena said about typing, if I could take all the thoughts in my head and just put them in the medical record instead of like spending 45 minutes to over an hour like typing my thoughts about a patient, that would be a big time saver at work. And AI is trying to do that for a lot of folks in medicine. So
That's such a good question. Just something that I can think of maybe would be to be able to put like patients at ease. You see this like it's the other half, like there's the exciting part of the job, but the other half is that you do see pediatric cases come through and you see kids on the CT sim and they're really nervous and um I would love to be able to just like let them know it's going to be okay and like just get them to breathe and they're going to get through it. And it's a tough time to see that they're going through this, but whatever we can do to make it better would be amazing.
Thank you so much. I loved all of those answers. And I think one of our last questions from the audience is, did you notice a difference in the ratio of women involved in STEM at AU versus in your current field?
There's actually a lot of women physics professors I've noticed at AU. So maybe that's in the minority, but I loved that. I loved having women professors and women classmates. And I think that was actually more than what I see here at the hospital, but I think that landscape is changing, hopefully.
for me, I actually chose a field of medicine that has a lot of women in it. Infectious diseases has a lot of women. And you'll look at like pediatrics or OBGYN, but there are a lot of fields in medicine that are male dominated still. So it really depends, what kind of environment you want to work in. But I have found that even my friends and colleagues who are in like different surgical subspecialties or in more male dominated fields, they still are able to really show their skills and do a like have a good network and a community and really still have a good experience despite maybe being in the minority in their field.
So I will say that mine expands a little bit further, right? It's not just, chemistry can be very male dominated, but, it can also be a select few. I will say that in my current employment and field, there are a lot of international individuals, just in my company, not just women, there's men, there's everybody, right? So I've seen so many different cultures at my position and in my job and my company prides themselves on that. They actually would like to have a 51% ratio of, diverse candidates, different the sex they would like to be on. They liked it to be like 49, 50, 51, whatever the other part is. So they're trying to make it pretty even. They're trying to make it pretty open. So I will say that I love the fact that the job that I have is just so diverse. There's so many different perspectives and I really do enjoy it.
Yeah, this is a hard one for me to answer because at the interface of science and business, I actually think it feels very male dominated. A lot of the leaders at the upper echelons of the organization I work in are male. And I think very few of them actually have kids, or they just, or like they have had kids and they're further on in their career paths. Um, but that's not to say that female leaders don't exist in my field. The chief medical officer, the chief clinical operations officer, the head of medical affairs, they are all women who have thriving careers and also have children and families. So I think they go about it with work-life integration rather than balance, if that makes sense. So I see responses from them like in the middle of the night when the kids are like, I don't know, keeping them up or something. But other times they also place boundaries around like, hey, I'm just not going to go to this conference and here's an opportunity for a younger team member to go instead. So yeah, it's a nuanced answer if that makes sense.
Okay, we just wanted to thank you guys so much for all your answers and to the audience for participating in questions. Unfortunately, we're nearing the end of our alumni panel, so we wanted to leave you guys with one more question. So what would be your final piece of advice for women in science, for just anything?
I think going back to kind of what's been said throughout the panel, like don't be afraid to put yourself out there, like always believe in yourself. Um, Work hard, but also yeah, don't forget to have fun.
I second that. Ariana's right on the point, right on the money with it.
Yeah, I would say be fearless, reach out to people, even if it's uncomfortable. Try the career paths, even though you may not have financial modeling skills, just be fearless.
Yeah. And just to echo what people said, cast a wide net, go after opportunities where you may have doubts. And something else I'll add is, and one of the reasons I'm here tonight is utilize connections you made in the past, keep up with people, keep connected with people because you never know, where a connection, even if it's from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or someone you meet today, if you like keep in touch with them, where that connection could lead you to in the future.
I think it would be a great idea, like Annika said, to basically make good with the connections you have. You have four of us on here that are alumni from AU. And if you want to speak with us, I am getting ready to put my email into the chat. So if anyone wants to write a personal email that maybe there was questions you didn't answer, I I would implore you to reach out, not just to me, but ladies, why don't we put our emails in the chat? So if someone wants to talk to us, they can.
Thank you guys so much for that. And with that, we're going to hand it over back to Ellie.
Thank you so much to all of the women in science mediators for helping with the event tonight. A huge thank you to our panelists. We really enjoyed hearing the answers to all of your questions. It was a huge help to us. And as well, a huge thank you to the Career Center for co-hosting this event. And with that, I think we'll end our career alumni panel events here, unless anyone has any final remarks.
I just want to say thank you all for Ellie and your team for organizing the you WIS. I know you do this every year and I always find it super fascinating and interesting. Thank you to our panelists as well. This recording will be on the AU Career Center YouTube channel, so I will be sure to share it out with everyone who attended and then those who registered who unfortunately couldn't be here. And definitely Dr. Larkin, because I know she was super bummed that she couldn't be here tonight. But thank you all for coming, and thank you again, Ellie, and all of you for putting in such hard work to make this such an amazing event.
Thank you so much. Again, huge thank you to all the panelists. We had an awesome time. And I hope